Give me the eyes that say, I love to do it, and that's what I'm about.
First of all, I absolutely love this show. It is absolutely incredible. It's heartbreaking, yet it's hilarious at the same time. First question for you, Jay. Steve is a complicated character. He's not a villain, but he struggles how to support Molly. Can you talk about your approach to playing someone whose love for his wife is clouded with pity and guilt?
That's great. Yes, he's kind of a soft villain. Absolutely. My approach was honestly just feeling very emboldened by the reality that Steve had gotten his wife into remission with his anal protocols and his smoothie making. Previously, he's very confident in his ability to heal people or to, help them heal from cancer, and he's hell-bent on doing it. He wants to feel good about himself. He wants a win. He wants to keep his wife alive. He loves her. So it's very easy to just sink into that character and feel very emboldened by what it was he was trying to do. It obviously wasn't what Molly needed. And I think that's really what is one of the really big cultural revelations about the show, is that's actually what's important.
Absolutely. Speaking of what Molly needed, Rob, your character is one of my favorite characters in the show. He represents a side of Molly's journey that is purely about pleasure and discovery. Can you talk about how you viewed his role in her story?
Yeah. So it's interesting because I think Molly thinks she knows what she wants from him at first, and then it really transforms into something deeper and more beautiful. And kicks in the nuts become a less important way of communicating between them, and genuine touching, caressing, gazing longingly becomes much more important. So it was interesting to see both of them get pretty quickly, because their relationship kind of happens in fast forward due to the limited amount of time that Molly has left. And so I think it becomes something much more beautiful than either of them expected. So yeah, their relationship in the show is just such a testament to the talent of Liz Meriwether and Kim Rosenstock, who wrote the show, because you can tell that came from them creating this character for Yuck Yucks, and then really listening to their creation and letting it take on a life of its own and teach them stuff about their main character that was really beautiful to see. So, like Jay and I write stuff, so I can tell from looking at that script kind of like how Neighbor Guy might have come about, and then come away pretty wowed by the talent of Kim and Liz for, being just open to that very special thing happening, so that's the mark of great writing, Neighbor Guy, for sure.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, Jay, the show doesn't shy away from the idea that love doesn't always mean compatibility. Did playing Steve give you your own new personal perspective on love, loss, and relationships?
Yeah, it did. I think, well, first of all, it's a privilege to be able to be a part of a show that makes you reckon with life as it is, and the fact that we get one, and that's a gift, and that it's really up to us whether we make it beautiful or not. That is something that happens to us, I think, very profoundly when people that we love die. It's really lucky to be able to go through it on a show like this and have that takeaway without having to lose someone that we love so much. So it definitely woke me up in beautiful ways, and I hope that it can do it for audience members too. That's the privilege of being a part of a show like this.
Absolutely. Now, Rob, the show is refreshingly sex positive, portraying consent and communication as key parts of intimacy. What was it like to work on a project that depicts sex with such nuance?
Oh, I'm glad that you asked that. It's interesting because I made a show some years ago. I co-wrote and starred in it with a woman named Sharon Horgan. And with the sex stuff that we did in that show, we kind of like invented, unbeknownst to us, the position of intimacy coordinator.
Yes.
And we would do things because like we weren't really a couple and we didn't fancy ourselves as primarily actors. We were like, we'd write it and then be like, oh my God, we got to shoot it. So we'd do stuff like, what if the gentleman were to caress the lady here? And so we kind of were like early adopter, or we figured out intimacy coordination before it exists now. So nowadays, with the position of an intimacy coordinator, it kind of saves time just from like a producerial. They've been asking a lot of actors in the news lately what they think of intimacy coordinators. I don't care what actors think, but I care what producers think, and they save time. So, because that way you can just, instead of doing 18 mediocre takes, you can do 3 pretty good ones because you've worked out beforehand what you're going to do, rather than be like, why don't I just feel it and discover it, all right, that works for some things, but
that was cool. We didn't see any of it. Let's do it again.
Exactly.
And now we'll let the camera see it.
Everything was quite prescribed and figured out beforehand. Were we allowed to help figure it out? Absolutely. But you did it in an environment where it could be more immediately utilized. So it was super fun. And the show was very well run in that respect.
Jay, I want to get one last question in for you. You played Hades and Percy Jackson and the Olympians. We love that show. Will we see you return in season 2? And what do you love the most about your version of the God of the Underworld?
Well, I'm not going to be in season 2. I'm hearing good things about season 3. What I love about my Hades is that I got paid to be Hades. That's what I love the most, is I got paid, and it is the first acting job I've done where my children have watched my work. So that was also pretty cool.
Oh, that's amazing. Well, look, you guys are fantastic in the show. Thank you so much for your time. Incredible series. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Hi.
This show was absolutely incredible. You got me to laugh and cry all within minutes of each other, which is quite the task, actually. But Dying for Sex is based on a real story that was originally shared as a podcast. What was the biggest challenge adapting Molly's journey from the audio format to a visual and scripted series?
Yeah, we just love the podcast so much. So I feel like we just wanted to make sure that we were like honoring the spirit
how good
of
it was.
Yeah, it's so good. And like, how could it's like there's magic in there. So we couldn't make the same magic, but how could we make our own sort of thing that felt like what the podcast feels like? I think the podcast just grabs people and it puts you on this whole wild ride of this emotional experience that hits every possible emotion by the end. And so how could we do that in a way that would be visual, that would be for, a different medium, but still retain what was so special about the podcast, the intimacy, the humanity, the bravery of that storytelling.
And honestly, how were we going to cast it? It was like, how are we going to find actors that kind of have that immediate chemistry that is so there in the podcast, where you feel like these women are your friends and they're, you're there with them. And when Michelle and Jenny read together, it was like we were both in the room and we both just kind of quietly looked at each other and were like,
no, we were like, oh my God, that's the show. It's very exciting.
And we're so, I think we were both crying, but probably.
I want to ask about that for a second, because Michelle Williams and Jenny Slate are phenomenal in this show. I felt like I was a fly in the wall watching just their relationship as they were going through all this stuff. But can you talk about the emotional depths that they brought to Molly and Nikki and what made them the perfect choices for these roles?
Honestly, something that blew me away really from that first chemistry read where we had Jenny read with Michelle was the depth of emotion that Jenny Slate has available to her kind of at any moment. And her ability to just seamlessly start bringing out the emotion but while still being really funny. It's unbelievable. I honestly don't think I've seen anything like it. And so that was a huge part of this, of why this works, because I think she is able to access all of that. And then Michelle obviously is she's so funny in the show. I feel like you haven't seen Michelle Williams we know she's a genius actor, but
we haven't seen her take on as many comedy roles. And there was the first day on set, kind of just so scared to go up to her with an extra joke, with an alt, of some dumb thing. Just kind of being
just pitching her stuff.
I can't believe I'm pitching Michelle Williams dumb jokes. But she was so game and open and excited to do it. And I mean, obviously, the role is, she has to do so much, it's like, it's so physical, it's emotional, it's funny, and
she's in almost every scene.
Yeah, she just dove in,
Yeah.
She was fearless, and we honestly could not have done it without that attitude of like, I love this woman, I love Molly, I love the story, I want to tell it. And there is not like a moment on screen where you don't believe that she's there, and that's incredible.
Earlier you talked about capturing the same magic of the podcast, but doing it differently for television and as a series. And you absolutely did that. Where Molly's story really balances sex, humor, trauma, and mortality. Can you talk about finding the right tone for the series to capture that magic that the podcast had?
I mean, that was always like something that we talked, it was like something we talked a lot about it
endlessly.
Yeah.
Every stage of the development.
Yeah, no, totally. But I think that was also what drew us to the project, that it did kind of go to all of these places, these dark, uncomfortable places, but that it did it with so much joy and love and comedy. So I think that we were also excited by the challenge of the tone,
And I think at some point we stopped asking ourselves what the tone is. That word can be really, I think, limiting and crazy making. And
Sure.
I think everybody has a different version of what they think that even means.
Yes.
And I think for us at some point it was like, okay, like what does this story need? And like what emotion feels real? And what is like the most human way through this, as opposed to like, what's the tone, you know? But
But we were both comedy writers, like we both worked on New Girl together. And I think there was something good about, going into the storytelling with that kind of sitcom muscle memory of like, like how do we tell a story in a half an hour that is actually funny? So it's like with all of this material that is not funny. So I think there was just fun, like, mix of tone and comedy and drama. It's impossible to not say the word tone.
It's impossible. I know. It really is. We're all just stuck with it.
You guys captured that magic perfectly. Thank you guys so much for your time. The show is incredible. But yes,
Thank you.
Thank you so much for this podcast, because this show is absolutely incredible. Dying for Sex is based on your real life friendship with Molly. What was it like seeing that story brought to life on screen?
Unbelievable. Like, I'm still having a bit of a pinch myself moment, right? It was profoundly moving and also really incredibly rewarding as a producer to see something that you thought of in your brain with your friend get to this point. So it kind of also taught me, like, I could have never planned for this. I was just talking to a friend about this earlier. Like, you couldn't have set this in motion or planned this. This is just life happening and making sure that you're somewhat prepared. But it was a good lesson for me. Like, you never know what's around the corner, right?
I love that. Now, how involved were you in shaping this adaptation? Were there any moments from the podcast that you felt absolutely needed to be included in the series?
Liz Meriwether and Kim Rosenstock, immediately from the beginning when we started working together, it was very much Kim always said that Molly was the North Star of this. And then Liz would say, yes, she's not here, so then you become the North Star. So there's a lot of conversations, a lot of like very long moments on the phone, being in the writer's room. I felt really heard and seen, which then in turn gave me that ability to just let go and trust them. So there are some differences in the show. There are some characters that are merged like 3 into 1 and timeline differences. But honestly, when I watch the essence of the Molly and Nikki scenes, I'm like, that's so us. That is so us. And I don't know how they're amazing. They're so talented, but like they captured something that happened in a room privately with me and Molly. I just don't know. It was amazing to watch.
Incredible. Now, Michelle Williams and Jenny Slate beautifully captured the deep bond between Molly and Nikki. What was your reaction to see their performance?
It felt comforting. I cried a lot because it felt so intimate, and it looks like they've been friends since they were children. Like they've just captured that together, which I think was beautiful. And now I think there's a friendship there that's like undeniable now after working on this together, which I think was one of Molly's dreams, is to bring people together and to bring women together in that way. But I loved watching them Loved it.
Yeah, they were absolutely incredible. Absolutely.
Right? It actually made me feel closer to Molly in a way.
Absolutely. Now, the show doesn't just explore sex. It also is about pleasure and self-discovery and autonomy. What was it important to you to tell that story so candid in a non-judgmental way?
Well, that's such a good question. I think Molly actually gave me permission to do that. Like even within myself, like she was so open about sex and death and pleasure because for so long she denied that within herself because of shame and guilt and things that she had gone through. And to watch her kind of like get this diagnosis and then tear off all that worry was really, really inspiring. And I'm really glad that it wasn't just about the sex. It was about like really getting into your body and understanding what you like and what brings you pleasure and what feels good. And when your body is failing you, when you have cancer, I thought it was so amazing and brave for Molly to tap into the parts of her body that weren't failing her. So there's something kind of magical about that.
You know, the show is also refreshingly sex positive, portraying consent communication as a key part of intimacy. What was it like to work on a project that depicts sex with such nuance?
I loved it. I love when things go from uncomfortable and quiet and weird to then all of a sudden you get comfortable in the uncomfortable. Like I love when shows give you the space to do that. I loved it. Like one of my favorite shows is Normal People. I loved the way that was shot. I loved the sex in that. And I think we tapped into that. I did, you know, that was Liz and Kim and our amazing director, Shannon Murphy, like really tapping into that and being okay with things being messy, but also sexy, because nothing's ever always sexy, right?
Yeah, that's a fact. That's a fact. Now, with the podcast, it had such an intimate and raw quality, and the show does something very similar to that visually. Can you talk about how you worked with the producers to maintain that emotional honesty?
You know, I think it was just like this. That's a really good question. I think it was an emotional transaction that we had that I think just kind of naturally happened. Like they wanted to preserve that feeling in the podcast, obviously build upon it, but it was very raw and very real. And I think that's the tone that Liz and Kim found so beautifully. I think they just kind of took the podcast as a window into Molly, and then that was the permission that they needed to go to those intimate places. And I'm so glad that they were able to capture that. It's a hard thing to capture, right? Like that's not easy.
It is. They did such a fantastic job of walking that line. Nikki, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. The show is fantastic. I can't say enough good things about it. So thank you so much, Nikki.
I appreciate you.
You kicked him in the...
And how did that make you feel?
I don't know. Alive.